Informed. My name is Carl Buhariwala, and I founded Be Informed to help people make good decisions. Today, the topic is money management, and we are joined by Abeer Verma of Inner Wealth Financial Coaching, who'll be talking to us today about managing money under pressure. Before I proceed, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Today's session is being hosted in Australia, and the topic is general in nature. So if you do have any specific questions about your personal circumstances, please do reach out to a professional and seek personal advice if required. Today's session will run with a seminar comprising of about 20 to 25 minutes, after which we'll then proceed into Q&A, where you'll have the option to ask questions to Abeer, and then I'll relay them to her for her to answer. Abeer has also kindly prepared a one-page handout, which I'll share with registered participants following today's session, and the session is also being recorded. And the entire session will be made available on our YouTube channel later tonight moving forward. So the information in today's session is current as of today, and given that it's not touching on any regulated aspects, it is only general information. So if you do wish to rely on it in your personal capacity, please reconsider its applicability. And if you do wish to rely on it in the future, please check its currency and applicability to you as well. And also, if you do require any specific financial advice or tax advice, you will need to consult a professional specializing in that area and related to your circumstances. So I will now hand over to Abeer, who will take us through the seminar on managing money under pressure. And it's very timely to be discussing this topic given the pressures that we're all facing, local and global environment. Victorian budget was handed down earlier this week. There are definitely points for discussion and consideration, giving cost of living pressures and how best to use your money effectively so that you can maintain good cash flow, be able to invest it for particular purposes and enjoy life. So Abeer, without any further delay, let's get straight into it. I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you for that. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Carl, for the opportunity. It's very well appreciated, and it's such a beautiful platform that you've created. Today, we'll be discussing finances and money and sort of the mindset around money. So you can see there that the topic is managing money under pressure. If I could have the next slide, please, Carl. Thank you so much. So to set the stage, money is such a quintessential element of our lives. I myself used to work in accounting and finance for about a couple of years, and I've moved into the coaching space. So I help people with their budgeting and sort of basic finances, but also earning money and the pressures around it and sort of issues that we face around managing our money. So you can have a look at the slides here. We've got that many people are not struggling because they do not care about money. They're struggling because pressure, uncertainty, and overwhelming factors make it harder to manage their money, right? And that essentially means that it's not as easy as having a job, earning the money, and then spending it and saving it. There are some pressures. So for example, lifestyle pressures, political pressures, expenses that you've got set up for yourself. If you've got dependents, looking after them, but also planning for the future and having enough money put away for your retirement, being able to afford unexpected expenses that come up, being able to afford holidays or extracurricular activities. If you've got children, affording their fees, their healthcare, things like that. So there's quite a bit of planning that goes around managing money itself, right? And I'm sure that we've all understood that fact to a lot of, on a practical level, right? So currently, avoiding the issue of managing money effectively can feel like protection, but often becomes its own cost. And so, going on from that first line there, the issue with managing money is very much a mindset thing. Okay, it's a mindset concept as much as it is a practical concept, right? So if I urge you guys and I welcome you guys to reflect a little bit at the moment on where you are with your finances, where you are with your financial journey, and where you are feeling the pressure, right? And if it's as simple as you feel that you're not earning enough for the lifestyle that you have, then I would like you to reflect deeper into where that's happening, where you're feeling the constraint in your spending and earning. So I'll give everyone a minute to have a little think and do some reflection. You can more than happy to write it down. It's very good to get things out of your head and onto paper. Beautiful. I'd like to bring everyone back. So the emphasis today is on the pressure around money, right? And so do you feel pressured? Perhaps it's the political environment, perhaps it's your lifestyle, but do you feel that when the financial pressure rises, so for example, you may be changing jobs, or you might not be working at the moment, or you've got new expenses coming up, or perhaps you don't know how to manage your money on a practical level, then how do you feel the pressure, right? Where is it that you feel a sense of urgency, or you feel a sense of lack? All right. Because today we're discussing avoidance, okay, and how pressure creates avoidance. And it sort of distracts us from thinking about our finances objectively, all right, because it adds the element of emotions, the element of urgency. Could I have the next slide, please, Carl? Thank you. So you can read here in the first line, financial pressure. When costs rise and cash feels tighter, people move into protection mode. Uncertainty. If the future feels foggy, many people freeze rather than decide, right? Emotional overload. So these are some factors that contribute to us not being able to manage our finances, right? So the emotional overload is stress, shame, and mental fatigue that make it harder to face the numbers. All right. And if you feel like you're in that boat where stress, shame, mental fatigue makes it harder for you to actually look at your bank account, look at your numbers, look at your budgeting, if you do budget, then that's a point in your life that you might need to face. Okay. And so the question I will pose is, if you feel shame, for example, why do you feel shame? If you feel stressed looking at your finances, why is that? And from then on, right, if you feel financial pressure, uncertainty, emotional overload, shame, etc., what happens is there's a lack of clarity. Okay, because when you're not tracking your numbers, when you're not able to look at where you're spending the money, and by that I mean your actual dollar amounts, it can become really hard to understand what your financial position is and where you are currently, right? And that's as simple as how much you're earning and where you're spending that money. So you might be spending on things that you don't need to spend on. And another side question I'd like to ask is for budgeting, right? How many people budget? Do you follow a template? Do you follow a tracker? There are apps, there are websites, there are so many paid and unpaid models by which you can track your money. Even your banking app, right? For example, Combank has a really good budget tracking system. So you can track your expenses and your income. Now, when there's a lack of clarity, we get into the second last point, which is short-term coping. Okay, people often choose temporary relief over long-term stability. And that essentially means that planning for the long term, planning for retirement or your future sort of fades away. Okay, and often we forget about those long-term commitments and we focus on the now. We focus on our weekly expenses, our daily expenses. We go based on each week's grocery shop, each time we need fuel, each time an expense comes up, you throw your hands up and say, okay, I've got to make that purchase anyway. And so you can see how now that structure for that long-term vision, for those long-term financial goals, it becomes very destructured, it becomes blurry, and we lose our flow. And we know that short-term relief or instant gratification is often detrimental to long-term success, long-term fulfillment. All right. So the behavioral pattern that we notice, to simplify it, is we feel pressure, which causes us stress, and it makes us an avoidant. It makes us avoid that. Like, for example, looking at our bank account makes it very hard to do that. And so that leads to some not so good decisions. Could I have the next slide, please, Carl? Thank you. So now if we look at what you can do and not do in times of pressure, in times of uncertainty, right? So for example, what you cannot control is inflation, right? The living costs. Milk used to be $3 or 3 liters, and now it's six something. Interest rates, there's been a hike very recently. So these are market conditions. There's political influence, there's budgetary influence, there's so many things that happen, right? And there's certain things that we cannot control. Then there's the global economic issues. Every day there's something. Then there's the job market, for example. If you are a sole trader, if you run a business like I do, or if you work a 9 to 5, if you work in corporate or trades or any other job, if you work in childcare, most of these jobs are market dependent, demand driven. So while you cannot control the job market and the demand of the economy, there's some things that you can control. You can control your skill. If you have, I'm sure everyone has a certain level of skills, then you can look at, how do I grow them? How can I learn more? What is there that's now in demand now or in the future? And how can I upskill? But most importantly, it is to face the fear, right? I think there's a book, or there's a phrase from a book which is called "Eat the Frog." I use that a lot in my coaching, which means that the frog represents the tough thing, the hard thing, the thing you're avoiding. And so you just have to go at it to overcome it. So the first thing to do is to look at your own financial position, look at your numbers, look at what you're earning by the dollar every week or fortnight or month, and then look at where it's going, where you're spending that money. Is it going to subscriptions, apart from your fixed expenses, of course, like your rent, bills, utilities, fuel, car costs, food, etc.? Where is your additional money going? And there's a pay yourself first method, which essentially says that before you pay for expenses, you put a bit of money aside for your savings or your investments. And then from the money that remains, you put it into your expenses. So that way you've assured yourself that there is some amount of money that is going towards your future, and your expenses, your short-term expenses are still covered. The second point here is your skills, mindset, and income streams, right? This is something I touched on. Is there a certain skill you can learn? For example, there are so many AI platforms now that help you doing certain things. I had a client who there's a platform called Sintra, and Sintra helps you do copywriting, website, social media posting. Everything is automated. There's a subscription, and for that amount, you can actually have your website running at about a fourth of the cost that you would pay a marketing specialist. And so this client actually learned how to use that platform, and she became a consultant for it. So as a side business, what she does is she helps people, like small businesses, establish their websites, set up their social media pages and their social media accounts and their content. And it was incredible to see when she was exploring it, and she had no idea that she could have done the consulting, to then actually earning money from it, from her home, and all she needs is a laptop. So you can have a look around for what sort of skills you can pick up. And there's if it scares you a little bit that, oh, I don't think I'm capable of learning a skill, or I don't know where to start. One important thing to know is that we are growing beings, and learning never stops, and that you're more than capable. And then we have some income streams, maybe a side job, maybe selling some stuff that you've got. That's also extra cash. But looking at a side hustle, looking at a hobby, looking at what's in demand with the people around you. And then the third thing here is responding to pressure. Okay, so once you've actually had a look at your finances, once you've eaten the frog, for example, you want to then start building some resilience around it. Because when you're feeling the pressure, when you're feeling the lack or the urgency or the uncertainty, which is the biggest one here, there are ways you can train yourself to actually stay content, stay grounded and leveled when there is uncertainty and pressure. And that comes in when you have some systems in place, when your cash flow has a path to follow. So from your earning to your savings bucket, to your spending bucket, to your expenses bucket. The fourth thing we have here is your spending habits and decision making. Some of us might be, very good with our spending, very frugal, very careful. You might do the looking for the deals, looking for the best way to spend it, or you might have less spending on yourself. For example, you don't eat out as much, you don't go shopping, things like that, which is great. But if you do like shopping, if you do like treating yourself, That's okay too. But sometimes you have to do a little audit of your spending, have a look at the last 3 months and how much you've spent on treating yourself. And if you think that that's a lot, that number, that amount, then adding a little, giving yourself a little budget for the week or the month or whatever, instead of a free hand, can be quite helpful. So, for example, if you spend $200 a week on shopping and clothes, right? Shoes and clothes, for example, and you think, man, that's too much. That's more than I can afford, and that's more than I need, because I don't think I need new clothes every week. Then you can reduce it down to $50. Or you can say, I only go shopping once a month. So then that 200 a week becomes 200 a month. And you're still treating yourself. You haven't completely cut something off and starved yourself of it, but you've created a system. You've created a reasonable amount of spending there. And also decision making, right? So sometimes we see something to spend, and again, we have that instant gratification. We have this stress related spending that says, oh, I think I deserve this. I think I deserve a treat today. I think I want to have a coffee or buy myself dinner or get a massage, which again, all of those things are valid, but how often are you doing that? Are you buying dinner? Are you Uber eating dinner every day because you're tired? That means that maybe there's a system that needs to be put in place, right? Where that Uber Eats or that takeaway is reduced to 1 or 2 days a week, and you're spending time doing meal prepping, for example, or you're cooking extra dinner to take for lunch the next day. Even simple things like that make a huge difference, believe me. So again, if I were to recap this, understand your financial position, understand where your money is coming from and where it's going, have a structure in place for your finances to follow, right? So your income goes into your buckets, your spending, your investing, your saving, your spending, etc. Make your decisions with a lot of thought. All right, stay away from instant gratification, but also don't starve yourself completely of something. And of course, over time, build resilience to the pressure. How so? Well, by growing your skills, upskilling, finding out new ways of earning, perhaps. Because the goal is not to control everything. The goal is to respond well to what is within your control. And if you pay attention, if you do a little reflection, the cause and the root of our anxiety is always what we cannot control. Next slide, please, Carl. I think I've covered all of this as I've been talking, but here's some more costs of avoidance. And I think everyone can relate to these, right? Where problems grow when they're not faced early. Avoidance can create stress, confusion, loss of control, lack of clarity, etc. Delayed decisions may lead to missed opportunities. That's true. If you're saving for a house, for example, best time to buy is now. When what feels like relief in the short term can become a bigger burden over time. Avoidance may feel protective, but it often carries its own cost. So you cannot close your eyes to something and pretend that it's not there. But you can build resilience and strength and show bravery to actually face it. And finances are the same. Final slide, please, Carl. Thank you. Here's another recap of what we've mentioned. So get honest about the numbers, know what's coming in, what's going out, what needs your attention. Separate facts from fear. Again, if you're worried about money, ask yourself, what is it that I'm worried about? Am I worried about not having enough in the long run? Am I planning for something? A house, a child, marriage, studies, etc.? and I'm not able to achieve that goal, well, then why is that? What is required for you to achieve that goal? Work backwards. Focus on the next decision, not everything at once. That's true. I think whenever we go into something, we think about it as a whole and we try to cover it as a whole. But often you have to start with the one step, having your foot in the door. And one philosophy that I have in my coaching is focus on the simplest thing. Whenever you wish to achieve something or start something, always pick the simplest step forward. The one thing you can do and get done. Because our mind needs momentum. Actions need momentum. Momentum to start and the discipline to carry. Return to what you can control, which is your awareness, your habits, your priorities. And priorities, again, is the essential one. If you are feeling overwhelmed, I invite you to take a step back and have a look at what you need to prioritize in your life. And if you have so many goals and you think, how am I going to achieve all of them? That's okay. Pick your top 3. And I think one thing to highlight here is focus on investing in assets. All right. So an asset is something that provides a return, something that gains value over time and brings positive cash flow. So are you investing in an asset? Is that a business? Is that some shares? Is that a house or a block of land, etc.? Or some commodities like gold, silver? Build reliable cash flow. Again, your income is very important. Reduce debt and financial commitments where possible. That's key. So reducing debt can look as simple as reducing certain payments that you make to services or products that you don't need. Reducing debt can be redirecting whatever you're earning and focusing on paying off debt, especially if it's incrementing interest, making it a decision to pay that off slowly but surely. I've had clients who've had so much debt and that they've accumulated over years. And then once they had some structure and discipline, they were able to pay it off in months. And I'm talking thousands of dollars, 5 figures. So those are some simple things, some things that we could cover in our time here. But I would love for everyone to have a reflection on this, have something to absorb and have a think for some of the questions. I'm happy to answer. And thank you, Carl, for assisting.
Thank you, Abeer. Just sharing Abeer's details on screen. So if you do have any specific queries about your personal circumstances, feel free to reach out directly to her. The session is being recorded, so if you have joined late, you can watch the entire session on our YouTube channel after today's session. There's also a one-page handout that Abeer has kindly prepared for those that have registered by email through Eventbrite. So if you are a registered participant, you will get an email from me, the copy of that handout. So yeah, quite an interesting topic, I think. That people don't think about it until it really impacts them financially, emotionally, personally, their family, their job, what have you. So I think Abeer has covered quite a lot of information in the session. So we'll now head into Q&A. And Abeer, the first question that we've got is around mindset. And you talked about how you need to sort of train your mind and sort of, I guess, flex that muscle a bit to help you sort of stay on course when there is pressure. When you have clients that come through to you, with a bit of their concerns and they need to sort of be in the right mindset to manage money effectively, what sort of tips do you give them to like your top 1, 2, 3 tips, I guess, to help them train their mind to be a bit more aware of where the potential pressures might be coming from and how they can manage through that.
Absolutely. Thank you for whoever's asked. That's something I've seen my clients go through and myself. So, for example, when I switched from my full-time job to my coaching, there was obviously a period of time in which I had no income. But before I started the coaching, before I gave up my job, I had actually given myself a amount, something that I would spend on for my mentoring, my coaching, my education, etc. And that helped sustain me between that sort of during that transition period, right? But what happened was when that money was running low, when that amount I had set was running low, and my business was still taking time to pick up because, of course, it needs exposure and I'm learning and all these things. That is when I felt like, oh my God, have I made the wrong decision? Oh my God, what am I doing at this point? But one thing that I, obviously coming from finance, had already kind of practiced was keeping a track of my numbers. And so for me, on a practical level, I had reduced my spending on non-essential items by quite a lot, right? And I was focusing on my savings. I always invested in my portfolio. Whatever I earned, I would put money in there. And I had kept my living expenses very low. But in that time, what I had to tell myself was that this is not permanent. This is not the end all be all. This is a time in which I am actually expanding into something newer, something better, something that's really strongly related to my passion. And it will settle over time. And I can tell you that the actual structure that I had in place for my spending, being able to track every dollar, that was actually the quintessential part of actually helping me with my mindset, because I knew exactly how much I had, exactly where it was going, and exactly how much I had to earn to stay level. Because I say that because when clients come to me and they are overwhelmed, I can see that they have no structure. They actually are not aware of where their money is going at all. And they've got car payments, they've got childcare, they've got so many things on their plate, but they actually haven't had any, they haven't paid attention to that money, the cash flow at all. So I would say it's a two-part sort of thing, where one, if your actual structures are in place and you've practiced keeping track of your money, tracking your dollars, and then that added with your goals and where you're heading and your vision. And are you on track for that vision? Are you actually working towards it actively? So those things combined as well, I would say. I hope that answers your question. I did a bit of an anecdote to help you understand.
No, thank you, Abeer. Yeah, I think it's very crucial to think about everything in sort of in a manner where it's, things happen, but you have to be adaptable and flexible to the time as well, and trying to take a straight course, especially in these times, is not often the best approach. Things are changing very rapidly.
Yeah.
And, even the interest rate rise this week, sort of stunned a few people, but
yeah,
apparently our inflation in Australia is a bit too high. So yeah, I think your mindset needs to be able to flex and adapt. Otherwise, you will be overwhelmed by the growing pressure. Okay, next question, Abeer, is on resources and tools. Now, of course, we won't recommend to promote any particular individual or third-party organization, I guess, but if we can just, Abeer, just summarize, if someone wants a free tool or to basically help them with budgeting and all that, is it just, Microsoft Excel, or is it a little spreadsheet that they do in their book? I guess, what sort of tools have you come across that can help?
Yeah,
sort of, you mentioned some of the banking apps, what else have you come across?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't diss Excel at all, and that's coming from an Excel hater. But for example, I have a template that I give to my clients for free, and it's on spreadsheets. So it's a very simple expense tracking template, and it has a space for what your budget is, and then where you're spending your money month by month by month. And it's got categories, it's got all these resources. If anyone likes it, I'm happy to share it. But it's such a basic and easy to understand, easy to use tool where you can actually see your money. And every time a client uses it, they're like, oh, now I see. Oh, now that I see where my money is going. Now I see how much I need to put into my savings versus here, 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 here. So you can find trackers like that in online. You can actually download them for free. I've got one as well. Your banking app, I know I use ANZ and Combank just because everyone are aware of them, and they can help you actually track your money by categories. So food and drink, entertainment, blah, 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 blah. Wherever the money is going, you can track it. So even just pulling out your phone, having a look at your last 30 days, last month, and where you've been spending, looking at the categories. Perhaps your food spending category was higher than expected. That's great. You've just had at least had some awareness around that. There are some apps, some websites as well. So Mumu, I think, is one. Bilru, sorry, I think that's one. That's a paid one, but you can have categories there, you can have budgets there, and etc. So it depends on how, I guess, tech literate you are, how much time you're willing to spend on it. Can you sort through your bank statement as an Excel sheet? Can you sort categories? Can you do that? So I would say some tracking resources would be the Excel, your banking app, and then things like Bilru.
No, thank you, Abeer. And just as a reminder, we're not promoting or recommending any third-party service, but they're all suggestions, and feel free to research and consider those in your own time.
Yeah.
Abeer, we have a question around this, right? So how do you individualize this issue of managing money? I guess, in today's world, we're so connected. There's a lot of social media influence on our behaviors and actions. There might be, peer pressure, so to speak, from your work colleagues, your social friend group, your family, what have you, right? How do you still, instill, I guess, a sense of calm in your clients when they're they're seeing all this information out there? They're getting urged to maybe spend. I think you covered a few sort of tips in your presentation, but how do you individualize this topic and really just try and get your clients to think about, well, okay, I need to think about my circumstances here, and how do I effectively manage my money, right? Because there's going to be a lot of influences and that instigate what you do, but you have to sort of keep them to one side, right? Otherwise, you will not be prudent with your cash. So
yeah. That's a beautiful question. Thank you for asking. It goes back to actually the core philosophy of my work, which is inner authority and independence and sovereignty, right? Which is, basic terms, the ability to make your own decisions. Because you will notice not just money, but across our life, our decisions are influenced by people, by social media, by politics, by all these external factors, right? So even if you look at the course you've studied or the job that you're doing right now, was it something you wanted to do? Or was it something that you were influenced to do? Okay, getting married, having kids, buying a car, everything you're influenced by some factor, right? So I think what I would say is always, always, always prioritize building your own decision-making skills and your own independent thinking. Okay, influencers, very tricky space. It's very tricky space because they cannot be trusted most of the time. Most of the time, I have some influencer friends, in fact, and they are very much driven by trends. They're driven by the brands that they are who are promoting them or they are promoting. They're driven by people's need for, I guess, dopamine, right? And things that really attract their attention, hook them, and they're not actually driven by depth. They're not driven by they're driven by the masses and not the individual. So if you find yourself being influenced by an influencer, for example, I would ask you to step back and question, what do you think about that particular thing? Do you deep down agree with their advice, for example? because having the ability to think on your own without being influenced is extremely important and across all areas of life. And it's quintessential in your money, right? Because it's your money, you're putting in the hours to earn it. So you should decide what's best for you and where it goes. And always look at the credibility of that person as well, of the person that you're influenced by. What are they like? What's their income? What's their lifestyle? Are they like you? If you have a family but they don't, if you have certain expenses but they don't, if you live in a certain area but they don't, have a look at that. If you're working 60 hours a week and they're getting a brand deal that's like 60,000 for 2 reels, because that's what happens, is that a sufficient comparison for you?
They're very wise words, Abeer. It actually links to another question that we've got, and I'll just tag it on, which is around misinformation. There is so much information out there, and that's the reason why I founded Be Informed, right? We want to provide curated sessions to those that want to learn in a safe space that's extremely reliable and objective and clear. And I think in nowadays, with social media, what you hear on TV, there are certain things that can just really confuse you, which then might lead you to do certain things, like we saw with petrol, right? A lot of panic buying occurred, but was there really a need for that? No. Maybe what sort of recommendations do you provide to your clients where they, I guess, have so much information thrown at them, and they're, of course, they're willing to flex and they're willing to adapt and they're willing to, navigate through the course, but the question what to rely on and how to sort of, take trust in what they hear can often be difficult, especially if they're not financially literate or they do need some support in managing their finances. Of course, you can see a coach, you can get support, but what sort of independent, I guess, steps can they take just to make sure they are thinking correctly and make the right decision?
Of course. It goes back to one of my slides at the end there, and the basics around money. So the basics will always remain the same, right? It will be you're earning money and you're spending money and you're saving money, right? Those things are always there, and you're investing in as well. But even just becoming, if you're not very literate in finances, that's fine, because you can learn and become literate, right? Always have that mindset. Never say that you can't do something. Okay. So the basics would be even just starting to track your money, starting to track and categorize all of your expenses. If you're earning $1,500 a week and you're spending $800 a week, then you have to know, what am I spending that 800 on and where is the rest of it going? Right? So even just that basic habit is powerful. It's powerful. Okay. Then you want to understand what your goals are. Okay. And stay with me here. So if you want to buy a house, if you want to buy a car, if you want to invest in something or study more, whatever it is, or save for your retirement, you have to actually know what you're working towards. And you'll be surprised to know that many people actually don't know that. They're just in the race. They're just in the loop of earning and spending, but they're not sure what they're heading towards. Okay. So now those two things, once you've got them, so you are tracking your money, tracking everything, and now you know what your goals are, it would be then to align yourself to those goals. Right? So if you want to, let's say, go on a holiday and it's going to cost you $8,000, you have to look at how long it's going to take you to save up for that. You have to look at, is it really the right time to go on a holiday for me at the moment? Or is it something that I can put on a pause? Then you have to look at the money that you are saving. Where is it sitting? For example, is it sitting just in a normal account that is accruing you no interest? Or is it time to look into a high interest savings account? Right? And if you're not sure what that is, Google it. We're in the world of ChatGPT, of all these resources that are at our fingertips. So always have a reach out and educate yourself. Now, if the question is, how do I trust that information? Right? One of the things is to cross-verify. So if one person says something that, oh, you should do X, Y, Z, okay, well, let me see if others are doing the same. Let me see what their journey has been like, what their outcome has been like if I follow this. So always cross-verify with different resources and people of different credibility, different caliber, right? And I would say that is quite a lot in itself already. So I would say focus on those things, focus on tracking, focus on your goals, and then align yourself to those goals. And whenever you don't understand something, research it, and then cross-verify it. And then just last point, when you want to align yourself, when you don't know if you're on the right path, that's when you reach out for help. That's when you find someone credible, whether it's a coach or an accountant, or it doesn't matter. That's when you find someone who can actually look at your specific situation, your specific numbers, and then actually help you be on track. Thank you.
Thank you, Abeer. And our final question, it's in relation to, I guess, something that happened this week around interest rate rises and sort of various sort of, I guess, increases to your cost of servicing a mortgage. I think let's put a spin on that, which is around avoidance, right? So people might think that, oh, okay, the bank has increased interest rate and I'll keep paying it. Not actually think about how it impacts their financial circumstances. I guess, Abeer, what proactive steps should people be taking when they do face increases in costs that are, of course, going to be fixed? Of course, in the future, interest rate might come down, but I think in the near short term, people have to start coping with higher expenditure for their servicing the mortgage. How important is it, Abeer, in sort of the work that you do and the advice you give to clients about being proactive about responding to those, changes and being, responsible and accountable for what they can do about it?
Yeah.
How important is that, Abeer, in the experience that you have?
Very important. Very important. And we've been seeing in the last couple of years how tumultuous and how unpredictable some of those economical decisions are, and one thing we can always expect is the cost to go up. You can always expect it to rise instead of fall, right? And so, of course, there are things like lower your living cost or your needs, spend less, save more. That's always there. But also, one long-term thing is to see if you've invested in assets. And that's very important. Okay. And if you are young or if you're just ready to invest in something, always think, if I can invest in an asset that will provide me with cash flow or provide me with returns over time, or something that will grow in value, rather than something that is an expense and will only cost you the money and won't bring you any returns, right? So if you look at, the car that you have, is it worth having those car payments for driving that car? Or is that money better put into your, into refinancing a home or into your mortgage? So you're decreasing it, making extra payments on that, right? So it's all about being fluid, working with the economy, but always having your eye on the horizon, always having that long-term approach to the circumstances. And it takes a little bit of resistance, a little bit of practice to actually move away from the current, from the present, and to be able to see in the future. But that is something that always pays off. So, for example, if you've got a house that you've got a mortgage on, you know that it's going to go up. You know that you have to pay that amount regardless. But you have to see, how am I planning for it? Where is my money sitting? Am I actually able to increase my income somehow? Then again, it goes back to upskilling. It goes back to finding what's in demand in the market at the moment. So all of these things, I would say, they're all interlinked, and it's all about awareness, and it's all about taking action for what's best in the short and long term.
Very well said. All right, that brings us to the end of the Q&A part. I'll just share Abeer's details on screen again. So if you do have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to her.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she can assist. And as a reminder, today's session is being recorded, so if you have joined late, you can watch the entire session on our YouTube channel later tonight moving forward. And there's also a one-page handout which I'll share with registered participants by email. If you've enjoyed the session, please do follow us on social media channels and recommend us to your friends, family, colleagues, those that might need help. You do rely on word of mouth. I fund this entire thing myself, and I run it myself as well. And I try to deliver one session a month on topics that are of interest. And the next session for June will be on requesting flexible work arrangements with your employer in Australia. So if that's going to be of interest to you or someone you know, please register or get them to register. Again, Abeer, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure those that have joined today or will listen to the future have learned something. And
I hope it's been
it's been greatly appreciated, I think, especially during this time when a lot of people are under pressure. It's important to hear someone that's got experience and can provide objective information to help them make better decisions.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure, and I hope everyone has taken away something and they follow on that, taking the simpler step forward methodology. And there's always a bright future.
Beautiful. All right, thank you, Abeer. Thank you all for joining, and I'll now close the session. Bye for now.